Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts.
Archlector George.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
We continue our coverage of the heroes, Joe's second standalone, and the next First Law entry. We cover Onwards and Upwards, More Tricks, and the Tyranny of Distance. So let's get started. Folks, as you know, we must start this episode off by thanking Vox Populi, the people, for your support.
Without any of your actual monetary support, you all have inspired us to spend more time with each other, because once a week is not enough. So we are excited to see each other all here at the end of April.
Mm-hmm.
But truthfully, we don't know if without the views that we would actually be taking it this far. As much as we talked about how we would do it anyways, which is the original point.
Yeah, I guess so. I feel like
it helps.
Do it. Yeah, it helps. But...
You guys are helpful.
And obviously a big shout out to everybody in the Discord server. It's good to see everybody getting along and having fierce debates over issues that I'm staying out of.
Yeah, we thought about changing the server a little bit. We've talked about it, but we're not.
I will. I just haven't gotten around to it.
I'm not 100% like. I think we should run it by you guys. Be like, do you guys want us to change the server to split it up a little bit? Would that make it more enticing to, easier to have a conversation in rather than having one feed? Because we are getting to that size now. Or would it just make everybody not even use most of them? Everyone just still talk about, in the main chat. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's up to everybody, but it is getting like a lot, but
chaotic.
I guess it's like people can create.
My worry is that everybody's not being able to express how they are feeling, just because the topic of conversation is nowhere near what they were wanting to.
Right. So then thinking like
express themselves.
We'll separate it. I'll separate it. First law and then other shit. I'll figure it out. Unless you guys want to, you two want to help.
Do it right now.
No, right now we're recording. God damn it. Shit. All right. But anyway, thank you all for just following us and supporting us and listening along and, joining us on this journey. Oh, thank you.
Journey.
And as we like to say, please send us any emails at circleoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com. Send us any messages via Spotify, Instagram, the Twitters. Hop on the Discord. We'll send you the invite. I would say, we can chat with you on Reddit, but we've gotten banned from there, so. Yeah.
It's nearly been 6 months, Jeff. Are you ever gonna let me live it down?
No. Although, has it been the requisite 100 days since we got?
I don't think so. Not yet. We just only deleted
until we can rejoin Reddit. I'm not letting you live it down. Sorry, that's just not. That's just
damn.
Case.
That's fucked up, Jeff. Anyways,
Harrison, you be quiet before I get on your xenophobia. Don't
speaking of fucked up, let's get back to the war book. The book about war. That's fucked up.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So we'll get to the first segment, which is our community interaction segment. Boys, take it away.
Well, we do have one topic, but we're only going to minorly touch on it. Other than, of course, get on House of the Meme Maker, as we guys already know. There's been a lot of controversy in the book community. Just jump on YouTube. You should be able to find it and decide for yourselves. But it's fairly serious. But everybody has to make their own opinion. But since we are a very small pillar of the community, we thought we'd just say, go check it out. It's very interesting.
What's going on? What are you talking about?
Jeffrey.
The YouTube thing.
I'm talking about the controversy between Naomi King and Daniel Green.
Good for me. I know nothing about those two.
We all have our own thoughts on it. If you like drama, which, just be honest, most of us do, you can go check it out. There's plenty of information on YouTube. But we are a part of the book community, and I thought we'd just say it's a fucking mess. So they definitely created a gossip in a book community on YouTube and stuff that hasn't really happened before. I don't think, not to this extent, not as with a big of an audience. So It's interesting, but don't get too invested. I'm sure it's not worth your time.
Can you explain? So, is the guy you say he's like a reviewer on YouTube for books?
Yeah, Daniel Green is actually what brought me into the First Law, but basically he's got sexual assault allegations being lodged against him, and I don't think they're unfounded. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But at the same time, she is obviously there's more to it than she initially let on, which of course creates some credibility issues. Not saying that either one of them are great in any way, and it's kind of a mess. But anyways, it's always good to be informed about weird shit going on. So just go take a look. It is mildly entertaining, very upsetting for many, and if you are affected by,
how is it very upsetting for many, and then you're like mildly entertaining? You fucking
it can be both, Jeffrey. I see no reason why the situation cannot be both.
I'm cutting that specific part out. What the fuck?
It's gossip. Are you shitting me, Jeffrey? It's entertaining.
People like being upset. People love being upset.
No, people love drama. People like acting like they know what's going on. I know what that person is feeling. I understand them.
All right.
I called it from the beginning.
Everyone's a detective.
Everybody is entertained by it, Jeffrey.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know enough about the situation to even really comment on it.
My only warning is that for those of you who are affected by terrible abuse, sexual otherwise, should probably stay away from it because it is quite triggering in many ways. Otherwise,
Jesus Christ.
Otherwise, George and Jeff can cut out as much of this as they want. I don't give a shit.
All right, we'll move on. Move on from that heartening, light-hearted news.
It can be both, Jeffrey. It depends on who's watching it.
George, you see what?
All right, that's enough of that.
Yeah,
that's enough
geez,
of that.
fuck. All right. All right. So, thank you for that, boys. We'll move on to our first chapter read through, which is Onwards and Upwards, and gonna work on moving on. So, this, folks, is another chapter like Casualties, and we love our shifting POVs in the middle of a chapter. Maybe 6 paragraphs, 8 paragraphs long. That kind of thing gives us just enough to humanize the character, to give them some backstory, and then we move on from them either willingly or by death, as we are used to with Joe, right? And so we start off with the perspective of this kid named Redder, who is a 13-year-old bugler with General Jallenhorn and Colonel Gorst, and Jallenhorn starts off the conversation as like, I think we can call that dawn, right? We can call that dawn. It's like very dark, but there's some light coming over the horizon, but pretty gray because, as you know, it is gonna be raining. And Redder is kind of like, he's nervous, obviously, as a 13-year-old boy is going to be shitting his pants. Doesn't have armor, just has a pony and a bugle. He goes, all right, well, Jallenhorn's like, just stay brave and stay close to me and you'll be okay. We'll see how well that turns out for him. But he sounds the advance, whatever that is.
I love how it's like says that he doesn't know how to. All he knows is how to do the maneuvers, but he doesn't really know what maneuvers are. He just he tells me to play that sound, and I'll play that sound. That's fine.
Right, he knows how to. He's like, I don't even know what maneuvers means, but I'll sound them. I'll sound them.
Gotta fake it till you make it. Eh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so. But he does his job well, and they start advancing across the banks, the river. They cross the river, and he sees that there are men in the orchards up above, shooting arrows. But it's not like a well organized, coordinated volley of arrows. It's a bunch of random dudes and just shooting off arrows, hitting a couple guys, but not getting our boy Redder. So he's good. He's nice and safe, even though he's trying to make himself as small as possible on that horse. He's like, Jesus Christ. And then he sees one with a shock of blonde hair who had knelt down to shoot an arrow, and it just drifted harmlessly into the sand just ahead of the front rank. And then he turned and hurried off towards the orchards. Now we shift POV to Curly, who was a blonde-haired northerner who shot an arrow that went nowhere.
Always connected. Joe makes these.
Yep. I love it. Don't you? And so Curly is he's with some of the northerners that are kind of like retreating a little bit. They're withdrawing, and they're kind of all freaking out because there's so many Union men. And then he feels that they must have gotten mixed up with some of Glamour Golden Boys, because there are people here that he doesn't realize. An tall old timer with a red hood was squatting by him. And then somebody else is like, you see all of them? There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I don't think they know the word thousands here. I don't think. They just say hundreds a lot. And then, but Curly's trying to maintain discipline and order. He says, we pull back when we have to. All right. And then somebody says they got Northmen with them, some of the Dogman's boys. And then this man with the red hood goes, yeah, bastards, traitors. I heard the Bloody Nine was with them. It's like, what? Whoa.
Whoa. Logan, are you here?
And Curly's like, nah, the Bloody Nine is back to the mud, drowned, blacked out, killed him. And then the one with the red hood goes, maybe, but I've heard he's here. And then somebody, like a young kid, just shot a bow right next to Curly. Curly's like, Jesus Christ, not so close. It's like, sorry. I'm just scared. And then somebody in the distance goes, the Bloody Nine, the Bloody, and then just cuts off what he was saying and just like screaming bloody murder. And then they hear like a burst of mad laughter, not too far from them either. And people are like, yo, what the fuck? And then somebody goes, fuck this, I ain't fighting the Bloody Nine. And they just run away. And Curly is trying to, tell them to get back here, but they're not listening. And then we hear somebody else on the other side saying the Bloody Nine, and he's seeing shadows and flashes of steel, maybe.
By the way, whenever they're shouting Bloody Nine, Pacey does a great job at doing this. The Bloody Nine! The Bloody Nine! Like it's a ghost or something. It's great.
Love it.
And I talked about this before, but I love that when I was first reading these, I was really excited because I was like, oh my God, maybe Logan is here.
And then, and then he sees that there are more people running, right? And he's calling them cowards. And then, at some point, it's just him and the stranger with the red hood. And then the guy with the red hood kind of he gets stiff, and he's like, there he is. It's him. And then Curly knocks an arrow. He's looking around everywhere, like, where the fuck is this guy? Because all the stories, obviously, they have heard of the Bloody Nine, but he says he doesn't see him. And he's like, where the fuck is he? He's not gonna run from one man, no matter how bad of a name he has. He's not running. And then the guy with the red hood is pointing at him. He grabs him by the shoulders, like, he's there. There he is. And so Curly looks, and he goes, he doesn't see it, but then he starts feeling a searing pain in his ribs. And then another searing pain. And he looks down, and he sees that the man with the red hood had stabbed him. Knife right all up in his chest. And Curly's like, what? And the guy with the red hood, fuck. I'm going to cut that out. And then the guy with the red hood, he says, sorry, and he stabs him again. And then we switch over, and it's Red Hat. We know Red Hat, boys. From the first trilogy.
He was beat by the Bloody Nine, like in a completely unjustified manner.
Well, hold on.
Well, you're not completely unjustified.
First he made friends with Logan, and then he got Koofy smacked. But that's only because they were not charging as they promised they would.
Into death?
Wow. They came over there. Anyways.
Red Hat is I love that Red Hat's wearing a red hood. There's something silly about that in the most Joe way ever. He's like running around like, ooh, do you see that over there? Is that the Bloody Nine? Stab. And he sits back up and he's like, the Bloody Nine! He's here! Which this is, this is Dogman's plan, is to basically sow dissent among the skirmishers inside of the orchard. It's a good idea,
It's
The
very
Northmen
good.
fear the Bloody Nine, and they're using that. And I really like how this is utilized here. Like, I like how this book covers all aspects of warfare, and this is like a psychological warfare that we don't see in a lot of stories, I feel like. And this is used very well. It also connects us with the original trilogy, because obviously we know who the Bloody Nine is. It makes us wonder, and if is he here? And I think it's really cool. And he's kind of like the what do you call that? The
boogeyman.
The Red Hat is like the he's spreading discontent. He's the deliverer. You know what I'm wearing? He's like the prophet.
The harbinger.
The harbinger. There it is, George.
Yeah,
Thank you.
There you go.
And he's back there. The dogman slips up and he's like, all of them? And he's like, yeah, that's most of them, but there's still a few. And and they're like, it's crazy how much can get done with the dead man's name. And that's what the dogman says. So unfortunately, Dogman is definitely under the impression that Logan is gone as well. And that and a dead man's laugh, which I think is really cool, because the Dogman is using not only Logan's name, but he's like trying to replicate his laugh, which is horrifying, because the Bloody Nine does have a scary laugh. So anyways, I think it's very cool how the Red Hat is implemented in this way inside the context of the book for warfare.
Yeah, psychological.
I agree.
Yeah, psychological warfare. We don't see it often deployed, right? Sometimes in fantasy, and it's cool to see it here. And Dogman, he's always been a clever guy, right? He's always been smart enough to know, like, to think outside the box a little. And I like how Red Hat does also note that Dogman, he's keeping his men low. He's not making them charge into the skirmishers even as well. He's always trying to like spare his men, and even men on the other side. And Red Hat notes that it's something to be applauded in a war chief, because it's a rare thing, right?
Yeah, it's like we know now why they're following the Dogman, because he's a good man. That's actually why.
Well, yeah. I mean, Logan left him in charge, and I guess since then people kept, they kept following him, because hey, let's not forget, it was the Dogman basically leading. At some point, he became chief after Three Trees died. Don't forget that.
Ooh. I mean, that's very true. I mean, Logan became the king after he killed Bethord, but they still were really following Dogman.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, Logan usurped Dogman by accident when he killed Bethod, because everyone was just like, oh, that's the king now. He killed Bethod. Because remember, Logan was just Dogman's champion against Fenris. So, yeah. So, they look at they crawl through the trees a little bit, and they're looking up at the children, right? And they see that Ironhead's boys are up there, and knows that one of them in the distance, a big man, they can hear him yelling at his own men, and Dogman is like, well, he doesn't sound too happy. And they all smile, and they're like, no, there's no music so sweet as an enemy's despair. And then we switch over to the perspective of Irig. Is it Irig? Yes, it's Irig.
Yes,
it is Irig. We switch to the perspective of Irig, and he's screaming at all of the men that were skirmishers that have retreated back, because they should have been down there, fighting the Union, goddamn them, or fighting those other Northerners, whoever is down there. Yeah,
those bloody cowards.
Yeah, bloody cowards. And I like this because it's a comedy trope, because Irig has a second. His name is Temper, and Temper repeats everything Irig says. So,
and I love how it's pointed out as well that it's just the same, but in a higher pitch. So it's like, Ironhead's boys don't run. It's like, yeah, Ironhead's boys don't run.
He's like the bully.
Yeah. And Irig's like, fuck the Bloody Nine, and Temper's like, fuck him, fuck him.
I love the bit where he's like, if he wants to go up here, he'll have to deal with me. And he goes, yeah, if he comes up here, he'll deal with him, with Irig.
And Eric, at some point, he goes, "Do you think you're helping?" Sorry, Chief.
He genuinely thought he was.
Yeah. And then, Eric reminds them that they got names of their own. Ironhead up there, the children. So the children's a little bit further away from where these guys are at. And then, they got the heroes, they got Cracknut Weirin and Call Shivers and Black Dow himself. And then somebody mutters, "Yeah, up there." And Tepper's like, "Who's that at? Who's that at?" And then Eric, he does the thing where he tries to pump him up. He says, "Any man that stands here and does his part, will get his place at the fire and his place in the songs. But any man who runs, well, he'll just give him the axe. Not even going to bother with Ironhead." And then somebody starts starts tugging at Eric's arm. He's like, "Chief!" And Eric turns and goes, "What the fuck? Can't you see I'm trying to..." Oh, shit. And he sees that, never mind the Bloody Nine, the Union were coming. And then we switch over to the perspective of Colonel Winkler, a man that's still on his horse because even though everybody else, once they got through the orchards, had dismounted, Winkler is still mounted because, well, he has a pesky little wound on his thigh that is, quite clearly to him, the sign of death. It's one of those.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. That's like how Brack died. Remember earlier?
Mm-hmm. A wound.
Yeah, he's got an infection.
Yeah, a wound in the thigh.
I like how Joe always implements these little infection things, or somebody filling their axe, or they got this thing. He always incorporates the most random deaths into the fact that it happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody dies heroically.
No, they do not. They do not. So, and a sergeant, I think, is telling him, "Sir, you must dismount. This is not the time for heroics." And Winkler goes, "Well, the bloody leg just won't manage it." And it's like, "Oh fuck, maybe should." So the sergeant tells him to maybe should retire and see the surgeon, but Winkler's like, "No, the surgeons will be busy today. I will not encumber them with my wound, but I shall press on." And then he turns to his men and he's like, "Men of His Majesty's 13th, forward!" And so, yeah, he's the only mounted man, and he starts moving on, onwards and upwards, as the title of this this chapter would say. And it's funny that he thinks back to the irony of this. That he got ran through with a spear, I believe, at Ulriach all those years ago, and everyone thought he was going to be dead. But turns out he survived, and meanwhile, his little nick on the thigh is going to be what kills him. And just always thinks that's just funny, right?
Yeah.
So
you got to see the sunny side when you're facing death.
The sunny side. I love how we use that outside the context of this book. We use that now because of this series, the sunny side.
Yeah.
The sunny side of things. And so he sees that the Northmen up at the children have loosed a volley of arrows. This time, he's like, "Fuck!" But he's not just gonna sit there. He spurs his horse onwards. And he spurs his men on again. He's like, "Men of the 13th, at the double now. Have you somewhere else to be?" And actually gives his men some bravery and courage, and they bustle up. They hustle up, and then he feels an odd sensation in his leg, looks down, and sees an arrow poking from his dead thigh. So that's the least vulnerable spot for him. Yeah, bloody assholes, and they're charging now and everything. And turns out, an arrow had gotten stuck in his horse's neck. Now, I don't like talking about this, but so let's just say that the horse teetered sideways and crushed Winkler, and Winkler's like, "Fuck, he can't get out because his leg is crushed."
Which is another thing that you don't get a lot in fantasy books. People just being crushed by their own horse unceremoniously.
Not true. Ed Stark got crushed by his horse's leg. Remember?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So as he's just there sideways, like, "Fuck, I'm dying," he sees Well, not only that, he got ran through from a hip. He got a spear in his hip, right? Because he crushed one of his men, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
Yeah, so he's pretty much fucked. Right.
And I love how he's just like, dear, what a mess.
And then he's waving to his, on you go, boys, on you go. And then he looks, northwards, and he sees a wild-haired man perched there with the bow leveled at him, and he goes, "Oh, damn!" And then switches perspective, and it's Temper. Now we're back to that group, but now it's Temper's POV, and he shot at Winkler. But as luck would have it, his elbow got jogged just at the last minute, and the shaft went off into the air. So he had snatched at another arrow, right? But by this time, things were getting pretty messy. So he goes, all right, you know what? Maybe we should have, dug a dip deeper and thrown up the earthworks a little higher. But all right. So he sees that he sees that Eric is doing a decent job, right, of like kind of holding up his side of things, but he didn't want to get too close because once Eric gets going, he doesn't really care who's around him. And then somebody fell past Temper, and he looks and he sees a Union man, a great necklace bastard with a great heavy jaw, with hard brows wrinkled over hard little eyes, no helmet but thick plates of scuffled armor, shield in one hand, heavy sword in the other, already dark with blood. I think we can say now that this is Gorst.
When anybody's described as being necklace, it's usually Ghost.
Gorst with little eyes, like his head little, and his little
piggy eyes.
Piggy eyes. And so Temper stumbled away from him because, like, fuck this, because he likes to keep a distance between him, whoever he's fighting. But then, a Carl came in. Gorst took care of him. He calls him Necklace. Basically, Gorst had taken out at least 2 people, right? And then Eric comes rushing from the side. And presses on Gorst, but Gorst is able to just kind of quickly retaliate and counter and kills Eric. And Eric's eyes are like shocked, like, I died this quickly. And Temper's even shocked. And then kills another Carl. So somebody screams that it's the Bloody Nine, but it's not the Bloody Nine, but it is kind of like the Great Leveler, right? Temper notes that. He noticed that I'm looking right at the Great Leveler himself. Maybe it's not the Bloody Nine, but it's a new version, at least to him. And then, what did he say? He said that in the span of a couple heartbeats, he carved out 4 dead Northmen, right?
That sounds like Ghost to me.
Yeah. I do like too how, like, because of the Bloody Nine psychological aspect, like, they're more afraid than they normally would have been. I like that a lot, especially since it's not just like, oh, they cleared out the skirmishers. All right, that counter is completed, and that now it's like it's actually affecting the whole army. They're like, the Bloody Nine, what?
Yeah, and so he notices that, like, a lot of men are now scrambling out back away from the children, right? I believe, and towards either the heroes or the space in between. And he looks back and sees that Necklace, aka Gorst, aka Incel, helps up. And we know it's Jallenhorn, but it's a tall Union man in a bright breastplate, shouting at the top of his voice. And we switch over to Jallenhorn's POV, our boy.
Ooh.
And
what up?
Jallenhorn is, he's yelling at the men, on, up, and up. They had to keep the momentum. And then, they're obviously pushing towards, the children, but he's passing all through these bodies. And in the meantime, Jallenhorn is, excuse me, he's thinking about the redemption that he's seeking, right? He doesn't want to just be the hapless, incompetent former drinking buddy of the king. He wants to be something because he knows he's not built for it, but he needs to. He needs to, I keep saying redeem, but what's another word for it? Like,
I mean, that is really,
that's fair.
Yeah.
we talked about it when we did the character spot last week. I mean, this is really all that Gjallarhorn wants, is to make up for his mistakes and get on with it, you know?
Right, he wants to earn his place. And for him, the way to do that is to break the Northmen where they're strongest, at the summit of the heroes, right? So they make it to the children, and they kind of like stop, but they see that the Northmen are retreating, but not like a panicked retreat, more like an organized withdrawal, right? And then Gorst comes up to Gjallarhorn. He's like, "The Northmen are falling back. We must pursue."
He's like, "Give me victory or give me death."
One of his Gjallarhorn staff members says that they should regroup, that they're well ahead of the second wave, too far ahead, and that the Northern Cavalry have attacked the Starska regiment. They're bogged down. And what about the Adjuin volunteers? They're still in the orchard, and they're getting split up. And Gorst is like, "Fuck all that. We must press on." And then I always sound like a fucking sick Daffy Duck or a Donald Duck.
Sound like Marge Simpson.
Oh shit! You've been letting that one.
Homie!
You've been letting that one cook, George.
That was a good one. And somebody else said, "Sir, the Colonel Winkler is dead. The men are exhausted. We must pause." And he's looking around. He's looking at the summit. Does he seize the moment, or does he wait for support? And then he looks at Gorst's eager, red speckled face, and then the staff members, and he says, "Fuck it, we're gonna hold here a little bit for the reinforcements. Secure this position and gather their strength." And Gorst said, he says, Gorst had the expression of a boy who had been told he could not have a puppy this year.
But General.
There, is that better?
But General.
That's much better. I love how Gjallarhorn has to like keep Gorst in check, because we know Gorst just wants to run up and just kill people. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Not everyone can run all day. Come on.
Yeah. And he says, look, he shares his eagerness, but he's not also like he's not falling for another trick.
He's not suicidal.
And he's like, I'm not going to be fooled by him a second time. The weather is against us. As soon as we have the number, we will attack. And so then he goes, "Where's Redder?" He's here, sir. I was like, there he is. Indeed a hero. Which is great, right? Isn't that great of Gjallarhorn to truly look at this kid as a hero, right? Because he says he looked pale, he looked scared, but so did they all. And so he goes, "Sound the assembly, boy, and ready on the advance." Again, we know Redder probably knows what this means. He just knows what sounds he needs to make corresponding to these words.
Toot, toot, toot.
And so he looks towards the heroes, and he's like, it's so close. And he sees one Northman, stood and looked back in the rain. And we switch perspectives, and now we get Ironhead's perspective, which we haven't got before, right? So Ironhead is frowning back, and he's like, "Fuck," because it hurts him to do this. He's a man that doesn't give up his position. He won his name for not really giving ground ever, but he had not won it in fights that he was sure to lose. And he had no plans to follow Whitesides, Little Bone, or Old Man Yawl, because they all died bravely. And who sung about those bastards nowadays? And so he had told his men to pull back, last of the men. And so he strides up towards the heroes, and then he hears a well. Who should I find running away from the Union but Cairn Ironhead? And of course it's Glamour Golden, and Ironhead's like, "I hate this cocksucker."
Yeah, it's interesting to see why. So, it's one of those things where people just start hating each other. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's just me, but I always am like, why? Why do you hate this guy?
It's because they're polar opposites, I would say. Because, Ironhead is stark, plain, I guess you could say.
And he's also very clever. Oh my god, what, guys, this whole time. I know you guys kind of mentioned it before, but they really are just Polder and Croy.
Yeah.
They're like, "I hate You have a different ideology of warfare. You scum.
That does make sense because Glamour is the more boisterous,
Yes.
posturing kind of guy.
He likes cavalry and he likes to be up at
Flair,
the front.
yeah. Oh shit.
And Ironhead is more cunning and more cut, and he's
No, yeah, you're right. You're right. And so they're sniping at each other, right? Calling each other cowardly and all this stuff. And then Blacked Out chimes in and he's like, enough. And then, I like how Ironhead, when he looks, he sees like, oh shit, this is it's a fearsome crew, right? He's got Kerndon Craw on his left, Call Shivers on his right, and Cracknut Weir right behind. And then and Blacked Out is pissed, and he's like, "This is what you call named men these days? A pair of great big names with a pair of sulking children hiding inside." And I like this part where he says, Rud Three Trees was a stubborn bastard, and Bethod was a sly bastard, and the Bloody Nine an evil bastard. The dead know that, but there are times I miss them because those were men. They said a thing, they did a fucking thing. And it's like Dow is just really thinking back to the good old days, y'all.
Oh, it does make me wonder, guys. Like, is this one of those things where it's just an older person who's in charge? Like, it was better back in my day, or are these gentlemen actually worse than their counterparts? I know we have rose-colored glasses, us too, when it comes to the original dozen, as we call them. But they, I don't know. I don't think Ironhead and Glamour Golden are that bad. I think that Blacked Out is just it's just sad all the time now. And
Yeah,
just reminds him of it.
he doesn't have. He doesn't have the people around him that he used to have. If I may, I'm going to refer to a scene in The Wire where Bodhi talks to Slim Charles and talks about the old days, and Slim Charles says, "Well, see, the thing about the old days is they the old days."
Mm-hmm. Oh shit!
That's it. It's all in the past, baby. It's all it is. Just keep moving forward. So, and I like how Glamour pipes up. He's like, "Well, I'm with you, Chief. I'm with you." And then that was like, "Oh, really? Is that right? Lucky fucking me." And he just walks past him, and Ironhead sees Kerndon Crawl giving him like a look under, and he's like, "What?" And then Crawl just, "You know what?" And then we go to Crawl's perspective, and he shakes his head as he gets past Ironhead and Golden, and he goes, "They were a sorry excuse for a pair of war chiefs, for a pair of men of that matter, but Craw has seen worse. Those were the times." So, Harrison, I guess you're wrong. They are just shit people.
But then Craw is the one person that's always like, things used to be better back then.
Well, boy.
Again, they the old days, right? So
those were the times.
And so he's with Dow, and Dow is just kind of like staring down at the Union, and he's just like, fucking Christ. He's pissed, he's like, maybe I should kill them, maybe I will, burn the pair of them. And Crawl's kind of like, "Oh, Chief, I don't know if they'll burn in this weather."
The weather.
And he's gonna be killing enough for everyone soon. The Union are down there. Dow kind of thinks about like how the idea is like you'd think it would be easy being chief, but it's dragging a fucking mountain through the muck. 3 Trees told him that, and told him every leader stands alone. And Crawl tries to help, be positive, right? He's like, well, we still got the high ground, and the weather is gonna help too. But Dow kind of just is like just looking at his hands, and he's like, "Once they're bloody." He's like, "Jesus, Dow, what's going on, Daddy? Come on, stop it." And then some poor kid chooses the wrong time to be a messenger. He's like, "Chief, Ricci's hard pressed down there in Ostrong. He needs someone to lend a hand." And Dow grabs him by the neck, and he makes him face the Union. He's like, "Does I look like I have men to spare? What do you think?" Guy goes, "No, Chief, no, Chief." He's like, "That's right. Tell Ricci to hold on best he can. Might be some help will come along." So the guy's like, "Okay," and he runs away. And Crawl notes that the heroes were just quiet, almost like at a funeral, right? And so he looks at Wonderful, who's standing next to him, and shakes his hand, right? Shakes her hand, and she goes, "It's time. Don't die." Stick close and try not to let you die either. Deal. Boom. It's very nice. And then he starts shaking hands with everybody, which is nice to see. You
Yeah,
know,
it's very like it was a pleasure working with you, pal.
Yeah.
It's very like this is gonna be the end, boys. But I also like
Yeah.
how it's quiet up there as well too. Like even though the Northmen love war and stuff, they're still like none of them really want to die, and so they're all still just like, oh, just waiting.
I like how we see this ritual every time they go into a battle as well.
Yes.
And it's always the one with Jolly on as well.
Yeah, because he shakes everybody's hand and he he shivers even, and then he finds Jolly on and he gives him that look. He's like crawl, and he's like I'll tell him, I will, and he goes I know, and then he even looks for Brax Edane's. Sorry, I thought I heard a knocking. He looks for Bracky Dane's hand to shake, but it's not there. And then he sees Red Beck, and he gives his hand a squeeze. He's like, just do what's right. Stand with your crew. Stand with your chief. Don't get killed. And Beck's like, all right, thanks, chief. And,
like,
and then he's like, where's Wirren? And then here comes Wirren of Bleh, where he's like, never fear. Wirren of Bleh stands among you. And then for reasons that Craw just couldn't fathom, he's stripped. He has no clothing on his chest, so it's just stripped to his waist, with the father of the swords over a shoulder. And he goes, "Every time we fight, you're wearing less."
that's funny.
And I love how he's like, I'm not wearing a shirt in this. A wet shirt only chafes my nipples.
Wonderful
so
goes,
dumb.
"Oh, part of the mystery." And Warren's like, "Yep, that too." And what about you, Wonderful? Does a wet shirt chafe your nipples? I need to know. Jesus, worry about your own nipples. I'll worry about mine.
It's always this crew always has the most like they focus on like one odd topic and they just can't fucking seem to come to an agreement about one specific weird thing.
Yo, for real. And then, but then Crawl holds out his hand to Wirren, and Wirren shakes it, and says, "You ready?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready." And then they all draw their swords and they look down towards the Union as they start to, they're about to come, right? They wait for the Union to come, and that's the end of that chapter. All right. Oh, before then, let me cut that out. Hold on. So they look down towards the Union and they all draw their swords. After Craw acknowledges that he's ready. And he realized that maybe Wirren might be right, that a man isn't really alive until you face death. So, Craw, a man that doesn't normally do this, at least from our perspective, raises his sword on high and he howls. And all the men around them did the same, and they waited for the Union. And that's the end of that chapter, boys. How do you rate it?
Out of the three of these multiple POV chapters, I think this is the weakest one in the book.
Really?
I think the first two are much stronger in theme, but I do like a lot of the things that come up. I love the subterfuge from the dog man and scaring the shit out of all of Ironhead's boys, and then that has ramifications for the characters later in the chapter. But overall, I think it's not as good as the other one, so I'm only going to give this one a 7.
Interesting. Harrison?
I actually really liked them quite a bit. I feel like it doesn't have. You're right. It doesn't have as much of a theme as a lot of his chapters do when it comes to the aspect of like what is the whole chapter meaning, and in comparison to his other casualties-esque chapters. But I do really like what we get to see here. I really like how we get a little bit of the group dynamic with Crawl's dozen again, but it's not like a whole chapter's worth. I really like the individual soldiers. We get a little bit of more main characters. We got Jallenhorn, or sorry, we got other main characters, POVs who aren't normally known. This time we got Ironhead. But ironically, even though I feel like I like this chapter more, I'm still gonna give it a 7 because I think it's a pretty good chapter. It's just I don't think it's like as good as Casualties.
Right. But yeah, I I'm debating what to give it because I really like it. I like the fact that, like you mentioned, Harrison, that we get POVs of pretty prominent characters that we've never gotten POVs of before.
Yeah.
Talonhorn, Ironhead. We see Craw again, but then we get who else? I'm thinking
You say Red Hat.
Red Hat. We get Red Hat's POV. We get to see the Dog Man, again, which we haven't seen him too much in this book, but we love to see the Dog Man. And then we have moments where we have people dying, and then other people just kind of running away and living to continue on the day. I like it. Yeah, sure. It's not as good as Casualties, sure, but I like it. Do I form a trifecta or do I give it? I'm giving it.
Don't let that influence your opinion, Jeff.
No, I'm going to give it a 7 and a knuckle. I like it. I like it. So
Okay,
we'll move
good.
on to our next segment, which is our meme of the week. Georgie boy, that's a you. Take it away.
So this week we've got Marduk 528 on Reddit, and it's a BoJack Horseman one. I don't know if you guys have seen BoJack
yeah.
Horseman. You have, yeah. So it's literally Glockter before the bridge charge. Buckle up, buddy. Your life is about to start. And then Glockter at the start of the trilogy. It's just, yeah, you know what happens at the end of that show. And that is absolutely spot on. I mean, yeah, fucking hell. I can't spoil the show here, but
Well,
goddamn.
well, the ending, the finale, remember? In that song? Do you know what I'm talking about? Mr. Blue.
But he goes through a lot of shit
No, for
in
sure.
that series.
It killed me. I was like, oh god. So yeah, you want?
Yeah, thank you very much, Marduk 528. I don't have a lot else to say about that one. It's just a very solid meme there.
I've never watched BoJack Horseman, so my context is limited. It's on my list, gentlemen. Do not worry.
It's a good show. It's a good show.
Man, I wouldn't watch it again. If I knew what it was about, I wouldn't watch it again.
Oh, right. You have to be in a pretty healthy mental state, which Harrison is, I think. Harrison is.
Yeah, totally.
Me and George, probably not. Oh man. All right. Well, thank you for that. What's his name? Marduk?
Yep, Marduk 528 on Reddit.
Marduk 528. Thank you for that. And again, if you want to send memes our way via Discord, join the damn Discord. But we'll move on to our next chapter, which is more tricks. And we start off with Corporal's Tunny's perspective, and it's pretty. The sun's up, but you can't really tell because it's just the weather is so dreary. And he's looking through the eyeglass at the section of the wall where they're supposed to kind of like attack as soon as the Northmen move, right? But the helmets and the spears are still showing, and they shift a little bit from time to time, but they're not going anywhere fast. And then he knows that Mitteric's attack is already underway, but the men at this forgotten end of the battle, the Northmen are still waiting. And so Worth, who's not taking a shit for once, is like, "Are they still there?" And yeah, they're still there. And then Yoke is like, they're not moving?" He's like, "If they were moving, we'd be moving." No, they're not moving. And I like how Worth, they can hear like the sounds of battle over the wind, and Worth is like, "Is that fighting I hear?" And then Tunney goes, "It's that, or it's a serious disagreement in a stable. Do you think it's a serious disagreement in a stable?" "No, Corporal Tunney. No, neither do I." And then Yoke is like, "But so then what's going on?" And then because they see like a horse with no rider kind of just appear over the rise, just nibbling at some grass. And then Tunney's just like, I'm not even sure. Then we switch perspectives and we get to Calder's perspective. And you could see that the trampled barley was filled with dead men. Right, their plan had worked. The cavalry charge was, for the most part, been mitigated. Just a bunch of dead cavalry, dead horses, dead men. Apparently, they really wounded their pride with the whole flag, pissing on the flag thing, the standards, and they kept charging apparently into the pits, into like well fortified positions that they were fucked. So, and they're all cheering.
If you've ever played Total War, you will know that you never charge your cavalry head on.
Always take them in the flank.
Always in the flank.
Always in the flank. That's it.
Unless, of course, they're archers. Then you can go full.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I mean, everyone's cheering him on. Everyone's cheering his name, Scale's name, Bethod's name. These men hadn't what would you say, like the biggest, like what did Joe say here? Oh, all the Union's bravest had achieved was to give Calder's men the biggest boost to their spirits they've had since Bethod was king of the Northmen, which has been quite some time. So these guys are feeling good about themselves, right? And I like how Pale of Snow is like, oh, before anything, I like how, while everyone's cheering, Calder knows that his sword is clean, and he's smiling. He's thinking, maybe I should is it too late to smear a little bit of blood on the blade?
It's so dramatic.
I know. And then he hears the chief and turns, and Pale Snow points to the south, and he's like, yeah, I might want to pull us back into position. And because he can see that the rain is getting heavier and everything, but you can see that shapes are moving in the barley, and he sees that more men are emerging from the rain. Union foot, infantry, vast blocks of them, and these guys are not charging. These guys are gonna slowly march towards these motherfuckers, and everyone kind of just like everyone's cheering, goes and so White Eye is moving the lightly wounded to fight as a reserve and to plug up holes. And Pale and Snow looks at Calder, goes, don't suppose you got any more tricks, huh? And Calder says, not really. How about you? And Pale and Snow says, just the one. And he just holds up the sword, and Calder goes, that.
He's like, ew.
So that's the end of that chapter, boys. That's it. It's a short one. How would you rate it?
I'm just going to give this one a 5. I love Calder. I love the fact that his gambit plays off here, but in the end, it's not really going to mean that much from what we can see. Like, they're still going to get overrun anyway. Mm-hmm. But at least they've had that one little win.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to rate it a 3 out of 9. It's kind of a fill-in chapter, like it has to happen. It's just continuing what was there, and I don't think there's too much here in comparison, especially how like the last chapter felt and read. So yeah, 3 out of 9, nice and little.
Yeah, I'll give it a 4. A nice sequential rating there, but yeah, I it's short. Love to see Tunny. We haven't seen him in a minute. And it's always great to see Calder, and like George, you said that his plan had panned out, right? And it really worked well. Like Mideric must have been foaming at the mouth to send the cavalry charge so often, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you would think at some point, I mean, they might have seen the pits and they would have just kind of stopped or turned back.
I mean, he does say that they saw the third one and jumped it.
Right.
But they're still jumping into a fortified position, so it still doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and because like
so it shows that the Mideric is really like he's very emotional kind of commander. He doesn't think about things. He just go forward and let's go.
Yeah, and I guess also like the real useful thing about cavalry charge is that kinetic force, right? Where it's all moving as one block hitting the enemy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you break them up via like pits, then it's not all one simultaneous like hit. So.
Exactly. It's decohesive.
Yeah. So I'll give it a 4 out of 9 fingers, and that'll be it. So let's move on to our next segment, which is our character spot. So we had another shifting POV chapter. So let's do what we have done before. Harrison, you want to start us off?
Sure. My favored POV of this Casualties S chapter is Red Hat, because I am a sucker for interconnected world building. That's why I like Marvel. And I think it's really cool that like Joe reuses these characters really well. Red Hat doesn't like say too much other than the fact that like he's there and he's performing these actions, but I do like how there's like a from his perspective, one basically only perspective we get of the Dogman as a group is somebody who's like, I'm following Dogman because it's like the right thing to do because Dogman's a good man, and I like that a lot. I like that the Red Hat is here, and I like that he has this connected character. Joe could have used anybody, and he decided to use Red Hat because he was connected before. That's cool. And Red Hat is also, I don't know why, it's funny to me. Like I said it before, but he's wearing a little red hood. He's just shanking people and be like, "Oh, the Bloody Nine!" Oh, it's kind of comedic. It's cool.
Especially when he's like, "Sorry, just stop."
Oopsies.
Sweet.
Slit your throat. Yeah, he's cool, and we'll see Red Hat again, and that's always cool to see the characters that are reoccurring.
Mm-hmm. George?
I like Winkler. I think he's the best. It's just this. He's probably delirious at this point with this sepsis that he's got. It's just like on his horse, and he's just like completely nonplussed. This dude's telling him to get down. He's like, "No, I couldn't possibly." You
I'm
know?
high on life, baby.
Yeah. And even when he gets crushed by his horse and he should be in pain, he's just like casually waving at his dudes, like, "Oh, that's all right. You just go on with that."
Carry on.
On you go. On you go.
And all the way throughout, he does the most British like curses ever. It's like, "Oh damn!"
There.
He is kind of badass though. You know, he's like injured. He's like, I'm on my deathbed. I'm still gonna lead my men. I'm gonna go up this steep ass hill with my horse, and oh, I fell. Oh well, he's pretty cool. I like him. Out of the Union officers, he's pretty badass. In comparison to a lot of them.
Isn't it like
Absolutely.
isn't it a British axiom like carry on with the stiff upper lip or something like that?
Yeah, the stiff upper lip is yeah, just grin and bear it.
Grin
As
it,
my nan would say.
There you go. Ah, Winkler. We shall miss thee. For me, it's Redder. You know, it's a 13-year-old kid pressed into warfare. Somebody should have given him a dictionary, but or at least taken the time to explain what maneuvers are. But our boy is on a pony, standing next to larger than life figures. You know, Jallenhorn and Gorst. And he's doing the best he can. And you know what? He's pretty dang good at his job.
He is.
He might not know what an advance or what the assembly means, but he will sound them to fucking hell.
Yeah. He's resolute in his job. He is a good employee.
And he has the presence of mind, right? To know that when there are arrows coming, he will make himself small to make himself a smaller target, but then he will realize that that's what cowards do, and so he will force himself to put his shoulders back, chest out, baby. That's it. So that's my boy. That's Redder.
It's cool. He also, no one's gonna believe him when he goes back. He's like, I was right next to Gorst. I'm like, you fucking liar.
You lying sack of
Okay,
shit.
kid.
Well, I was next to Jallenhorn and Gorst was there. Oh, that might make sense. All right, so we'll move on to our third and final chapter read through, which is the Tyranny of Distance, and we are in Finry's perspective, and she is with her dad, Lord Marshal Croy, and Baez. They're at the HQ's hill, and we're supposed to give you the ability to see everything, but there's it's rain, fog. He can't see a goddamn thing, Croy, and he is pissed. And so I like how this part was said they had witnessed Minarik's premature charge in stunned silence. So they must have just been chilling in the on that hill, and they just see like that the wave of horses. They're like, what the fuck?
What is he doing, the idiot?
Yep. And then they started Jallenhorn's advance. Then the drizzle began. Then Ostrong had disappeared in the gray pall on the right. Cleo's wall disappeared on the left, and then the old bridge and the nameless inn where Finry had almost died. So now even the shallows or you can't see shit, right?
The tyranny of distance. Eh?
The tyranny of distance. Yeah. So Croy is pacing back and forth. He can't stand to be like so uninformed, I guess we could say. He stands next to Finry. He's like, hey, well, first he stands next to Finry to say like that sometimes he thinks that there isn't a more powerless person in the world than a supreme commander on a battlefield. And she goes, well, what about his daughter? And he goes, nice. All right, are you all right? And he does like he means to, like he asks her. And she goes, I'm fine. And then she starts to say something, but he turns around when a messenger comes up to him. And he goes, what's the news? And he goes, Colonel Brock reports that his men have begun their attack on the bridge in Osrung. And Finnery thinks that Hal's in the fight, leading from the front most likely. And she starts to feel herself like sweat more than ever. It was Hal's coat that she has, by the way, that she has on.
And then the guy says that Colonel Brent is leading and attacking against the savages. And I like how...
Yeah, he says the savages who yesterday, and his eyes flickered to Finnery and back.
He's like,
savages. Savages.
He can't help himself. The old boy.
And so Croy asks for more, and he says, that's all I have. Lord Marshal was like, all right, bring more when you're able to. And then Lord Baez goes, no doubt your husband is distinguishing himself enormously in the assault. Leading from the front in the style of Harold the Great, a latter-day hero, I always have had the greatest admiration for men of that stamp. And Finnery's like, well, perhaps you should try it yourself. And Baez, he gives a little bit of insight. He goes, I was quite the firebrand in my youth, but an unquenchable thirst for danger is unseemly in the old.
Yeah, Baez. I like how Baez is, talking about his past here and mentioning the fact that he led from the front. Like he definitely did, against Glustrad. It's funny to think about him being in that way and him being young with hair. But I will say it's funny how he's just like, it's not really us. I'm old now, so whatever. As if like his age has impeded him. Like whatever, Baez. You fucking
well, he's all about behind the scenes. He knows where power is. He goes, no, a cup of tea at the rear is more my style.
I like how he also says heroes have their uses too. Like his perspective is always what has its use.
Right.
And he is always reinforcing that, which as always, it's so cool to see how Baez basically talked the same from the first book. We just didn't see it from the right angle. So
yeah, and so he and then Finnery says, like, where's your tea now? And I like this point where he goes, my servant has more important errands to run this morning.
Like, which means Baez is like, I just want to have it if I can't be poured it.
Right? He won't do it himself. I like it. And I like how Finnery goes, can there be anything more important than attending to your whims? And I like how he says, oh, my whims stretch beyond the kettle.
Baez humor is always pretty funny.
Yeah. And so I like how then another messenger comes, and it's Colonel Felnig. And so Croy goes, what's happening on the left? And Felnig goes, Mideric bloody well went off half drawn, sent his cavalry across the barley in the dark. Recklessness. And Finnery's like, knowing the relationship between those two, she bets that Felnig had something to do with it. Maybe egged on Mideric or something like that.
Which we know he definitely did.
He was like he was at the camp in the chaos.
Yeah, he was like, Majesty will not countenance the loss of his standards. Like,
we need to charge before dawn. You won't, pussy. Somebody arrest that man.
So his father, Croy, goes like, yeah, we saw. It's like, what was the outcome? And then Felnig says, it was still in doubt when I left. So you haven't the slightest idea what's going on over there? And Felnig opened his mouth, closed, and says, oh, I thought it best to return at once. And then Croy just cuts him off. And I like this. He goes, and report Mideric's mistake rather than inform me of its consequences. My thanks, but I'm already amply supplied with ignorance. And he turns,
shit.
Like, damn.
Oh, that's a good one to use, guys. Thanks, but I'm already supplied with ignorance.
Yeah,
that is a sick burn.
Yeah, and then he's muttering to himself like, "Shouldn't have sent them. Shouldn't have sent them." And I'm not sure. Like, does he mean like Felnig and Mideric? Does he mean specific commanders? Maybe does he mean like he shouldn't have sent his men just yet? I don't know. But then Baez, I guess he can hear. He hears the words as well. And Baez says, "Oh, I sympathize most deeply with your father," which is interesting to say that, right? I mean, he doesn't have to say that. I mean, does he mean it? I mean, probably not. But
I think he does. Baez is I'll be honest. I mean, it's hard to say. Like Baez is implied. Like he's narcissistic, right? Obviously, very narcissistic. But other than that, he's very human. So I think he does feel for Croy in a way of being like in charge, seeing his men die. Baez doesn't care about little people, but he does care about life itself. Like even if he wants to be the one in control of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like he's just like, yeah, that sucks that he regrets. He's got a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. I understand what that's like, you know.
And I think he knows that Croy is competent, and I think he appreciates competency.
He does. He does. He likes that Croy is effective.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what Baez does, doesn't he? You know, you put these people in charge, and then you kind of like use them up. You know, Croy is literally being broken down as a person, seeing all this.
Yes.
And he just goes, yeah, well, but that's just the way it's got to be. So I sympathise with him, but I'm not going to stop him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, but it's funny because, you know, there's that aspect, but then there's the aspect where he says something like, such a shame we cannot see the little people struggle from afar.
Yeah, that's like, what the fuck, man? That's such a weird thing to say.
I love the way the Pacey says this too. He's like, a veritable storm. What drama, eh?
Oh,
What
right.
accomplishment to a clash of arms. He's always so like, oh, ooh, isn't that exciting?
Yeah, because he's talking about how the weather is adding a level of drama to the battle. You know, if you could see the entire battlefield. And then Finnery goes, "Did you call it up yourself just for the atmosphere?" And Baez says no, and he says that he wishes he had the power. There, you know, he in the old time, Juvens could call down lightning with a word, make a river flood with a gesture, summon a hoarfrost with a thought. Such was the power of his art. But that was long ago. These days, the winds blow their own way, like battles. And he says, "We who remain must work in a more roundabout fashion." And just how the fuck did Juvens die or Canadians die by the hands of someone like Baez? You know what I mean?
A fucking laser beam from the other side. Listen, I love how like in a lot of stories, it's like, oh, this is the rumor that he did X, Y, Z, but Baez was there. He knows what Juvens was capable of. So, like, for a fact, it is canon that Juvens did these things, and that's pretty cool. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it really is. And then we get another messenger come, and this time Felnick, I guess, is trying to make up for his his idiocy. And he's like, "What's your report?" And so the guy goes that Jalenhorn's men have flushed the enemy from the orchards and are climbing the slope at the double. And so he goes, and then Croy asks him, "How far have they gone?" And when this messenger last saw them, that they were well on the way up to the smaller stones to the children, but doesn't know whether or not they were able to take them just yet. And he says, "Heavy resistance?" And the messenger says, "Getting heavier and heavier." And so he says, "When did you leave them?" And he says, "About a quarter of an hour ago." And so Croy stands there for a moment, and then he just turns and he says, "Saddle my horse." And then Baez, as smug as he was, he's like, "Whoa, wait. I would have it. There's nothing you could do down there, Marshal Croy." And then Croy says, "There's nothing I could do up here, Lord Baez." And he gets on the horse, and then Baez, he goes, "Lord Marshal, I deem this unwise." And Croy says, "By all means, remain here then." And then he gets on his horse and he starts to ride away. And then Finnery can hear Baez go, "By the dead." And then Finnery smiles at him. She goes, "Oh, it seems you may be called to the front after all. Perhaps you could see the little people struggle at first hand."
The first of the Magi did not appear amused. I love that because Baez is somebody who is, Baez is not afraid to get his hands dirty. He wants to make sure his investment is worth it. But it's so satisfying to see Finnery be a smartass to Baez, because Baez is like, "Ew." He's like, "Oh, I'll just have my tea. I'll just watch back cute. Oh, isn't that funny?" and then Croy's like, "I'm gonna get personally involved." He's like, "God damn, I have to get." Also, to George's theory that Baez is a Northman, this does more lean towards that. Although Baez has spent a lot of time in the North, but I will say by him saying "by the dead," like when he's pissed off, like in the moment, it implies that he has a certain underlying thought process and language. So A little note there. Maybe not, but he has spent a lot of time in the North, but still.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that's the end of that chapter, boys. How do you rate it?
I like. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I like this chapter quite a bit. I like how Baez. I love lore stuff from Baez because it's like factual, ironically. And I like how like the whole aspect of the war thing, like we have to get involved and we can't see anything, and Cora's just fed up. I got to go in there. And Finray is obviously still a little and I say unhinged. I don't mean like she's out of control or something. I just mean like she's still a little bit like whoa, what are you gonna do now? she's a little like off the cuff,
Yeah. Well, because it's debilitating to go through the experience she went through. It's almost like she didn't snap, but she is like there's like an element of battle shock, post PTSD, that kind of thing.
She's not really thinking about what she says before she says it. No, she's just in the moment. So
no, but it's funny as hell when she goes, "Hey, Baez, looks like you gotta get down there anyway."
Look, go watch the little people suffer. And I enjoy this chapter a lot. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 9. I think it is a pretty short chapter, but I really like the way it sets up with Baez. I love Baez a lot. So
yeah,
I'm very biased towards Baez.
You're very
biased towards Baez.
You're very biased. Okay, George, how about you?
I'm just gonna go one lower. I do like this chapter. I love, like you say, seeing Baez chatting shit. I love how nonchalant he's got now that he's like regained all of his power, and he's just like, yeah, I'll just sit here and watch the battle. Who cares? Everyone else is either sick to the stomach or running around, panicked, and he's just sat there like, yeah, whatever. And then to have the whole rug pulled from under him. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time we ever see anybody get one over on Baez like that.
Not really. I mean, we've probably seen it in the trilogy.
We'll see it again here in just a moment, and it's really sad. I would say the one up on Baez, there's 2 points in the story that ironically, this is really cool. Ironically, 2 points in the story that Baez is like completely like, you bastard, is on the heroes, and they're both great. I don't want to spoil the other one; it's too far away, but they're great.
Yeah, I think in Baez, like the first trilogy, we think of, remember, Mamoon, you damn snake, and then Mamoon.
Oh yeah, he was angry at it, but he never he's
not so, like oh my god,
what's going on? He's like fucking hell.
No, but even remember Giselle or Glockta was looking at Baez, you could tell that he's like shaking. And so okay, yeah, so maybe that's not the case, but we're talking about like one.
I think we mean caught off guard.
Pharaoh punched him right in the face.
Oh,
that's true.
That's true. 3 times.
Correct.
But it is true that the 2 major points for people completely like undermine him to the point that he's irritated but cannot do anything about it happens both times on the heroes. So I'm excited to get to those 2 points.
Yeah. Well, so what score did you give it, Georgie?
6.
I'm going to agree with you on the score. I really enjoyed the chapter a lot. It's just short, but other than that, I really enjoyed it. We see, obviously, we love to see Baez. We love to hate him, but we love to see him. It's great to see him and Finray interact, as well as, we can see that he's humanized slightly from his sympathy with for Croy, but then, little people from afar. So that kind of thing. But then what I really do like is Croy. I like seeing Croy in the position as battlefield commander, and losing his shit because he can't see it, and because he can't see, he doesn't know how to best direct his men. Because remember how upset he was after the events of the first day, where he's like he lost 1,000 men. And he was very upset, and so we know that this is one of the things driving him, besides the sense of duty. So I'll give it a 6 out of 9 fingers as well. Well, that's it. Thanks, boys. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the 3 of us, and your support means oh so much.
Join us next week as we cover blood, pointed metal, and peace in our time.
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media, or shoot us an email at circleoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And please make sure to rate and review us. Thank you all again for listening.
I deem this unwise.